formed in a dream, kept in a thought, carried across oceans, spoken in whispers, passed down from elders, planted in gardens of okra, prayed for in sanctuary, resisted with fury, protected with faith, created with love, born into being, from root to bone. You are here.
This podcast talks about colonial, racial, and gender-based violence. Please listen at your own pace and capacity. And remember to do what you need to do to care for yourself if you feel activated by this content. Should you need resources, please check out our section on resources at decolonizingtherapy.com. Be well.
Greetings, my good people. This is Dr. Jenn, and it is such a pleasure to be here with you today and bring in the amazing Foluke Taylor. The crowd goes wild. I kid, but not. I feel like I'm saying this every episode, but truly my heart feels so expansive to be able to share space with you, Foluke, to have you here, but to also perhaps introduce you to my little corner of the world over and over again as much as I can, because truly part of the joy of my work in this world is being able to connect with individuals that I think not only are bringing a boldness, but a level of brilliance that is, it is not hierarchical, that it is breezy, that it almost feels easy because it's truly who Foluke is. Yeah, and so I would like to start off by saying that this morning I felt a really deep need to deeply ground myself for this podcast episode and for introducing Foluke. And so I sat on my floor and I lit a small white chime candle and I, lovingly called in my ancestors and started speaking to the land. And immediately I was hit with this flood of familiarity for you, Foluke, deeper and longer than what our human transatlantic sisterhood existence has brought. And it was just pure gratitude. And perhaps for other lifetimes, other places, other spaces, I don't know, but it felt ancient. And it felt like a recollection and a recalling and a re-remembering. And so I did maybe 12 minutes. I was supposed to do 15 minutes, but hey, we love a rebel. And I sat on the mat for about 12 minutes, and then I just opened the book, Unruly Therapeutic, Black Feminist Writings and Practices in Living Room, by Foluke Taylor. And I opened to this. And so, dear Foluke, as our gratitude to you, I would like to just take a few minutes to read to you your own words and allow you to receive them. The term sister, noun, proper noun, pronoun, a form of address, an endearment, a rallying cry. The way a stranger attracts my attention in the street, a greeting for friends, a title, salute and salutation, code for connection and alliance, a word in the register of a hand placed soft, strong against the back, being what holds you up, supports the flesh of you, being all up in your being, listening to Rachel Farrell singing, "Sister, I'm giving you props, respect, and dignity." This online dictionary puts a nation-state-shaped wedge between Rachel and me. A sister, it says, is an African-American woman. How are we living and how can we live, sister, beyond this constriction, beyond the squeeze of nation, state, and citizenship, when words make the room tight? Ask questions. And I'm being pushed to just go a little bit further here. And therefore, sisterhood. And therefore, sisterhood, also a noun, and more than that. Sisterhood as states of solidarity, brought into being through action. Sisterhood as a doing in the form of citation, giving credit for work done, in the loving work of critique. Sisterhood as produced in and ratified by acts of recognition. Sisterhood as seeing and being seen, listening and being listened to, feeding and being fed, fighting and being fought for, resting and giving rest, holding and being held, remembering and being remembered. Remember, for instance, how easy it is to lose balance, to do all the giving and forget the receiving. And so this and many more pieces of poetry, feminist, Black feminist, rebellious, beautiful works is an unruly therapeutic. And with that, I'd like to lay on our virtual sacred space, our virtual altar and container. My beloved, this was gifted to me by a student. I just want to say this. Bastet, goddess, the Egyptian goddess Bastet, or this figurine of Bastet, because she reminds me of sisterhood. There's an old ancient story relating her to the goddess Artemis. And there is something about this like British colonial rule and Greek rule, like coming in and invading Egypt and Egyptians fighting back and trying to maintain culture. And there's something about, or I've read a story many, many, many years ago that Bastet and Artemis, despite, still took care of each other's peoples and still attempted to forge a sisterhood, even when there were these like ruling nation states, countries, spaces, and that Bastet went and gifted Artemis a black cat as in form of protection, and Artemis sent over a bow and arrow, and there was this sort of, hey, we know what's going on, and I still see you, sister. And it's a small story, and I can't even remember where I've gotten it from, but I'd like to lay this down in honoring the black cat energy and the sisterhood energy onto our space. Foluke Taylor is a psychotherapist and a writer interested in therapeutic practices that hold open space for thinking from and into the position of Blackness. She works with Black feminist modes that create and hold open spaces for the emergence of the yet to be and for the therapeutics that call into this being. Taylor is the author of Unruly Therapeutic, Black Feminist Writing and Practices in Living Room, part thesis, part memoir, and part poetry. Foluke explores how the centering of Black women's experiences in therapeutic scholarship allows for greater space for wandering, for wondering, and for deepening narratives in every therapeutic relationship. Everyone, please help me in welcoming Foluke. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me here, and for landing me right in the earth. Reading, the generous invitation, the generous welcome, and then the surprise of you reading from my book, but also I didn't know what you were going to read. And reading this back to me, what I was with, I nearly, it almost undid me in this moment when I'm trying to be here and find words, because what I was with was the fact that when I wrote that, I didn't know you. So I had no idea that there was a woman on the other side of the Atlantic, or on another side of the Atlantic, called Dr. Jennifer Mullen, who would become a sister, who would read back those words to me and let me hear the truth of them. Let me hear quite how true that was then and now. Wow, sister. And the other thing that floored me, you asked me about a virtual altar. And so I actually bought things from my own altar, and I was trying to choose between two and I couldn't. So I bought them both. And one is made by my daughter, which is, I can't see myself. So can you see this? Yeah.
We can.
This is an extract from my book, from Unruly, that she's layered over with various colors. And this photograph of a space in West Africa, right at the tip in the Gambia, where we lived for more than 10 years. And this is the road, and this is the ocean. This is the road to the ocean. And so I wanted to bring her because she also honored my book in a particular way. She gave it back to me in a way. So that's one Black woman, my daughter Asili. And the other is this sister. This is my friend, Miss Sandra Thompson, I like to call her. She died very suddenly last year. She lived in Kingston, Jamaica. This is her in her house. She loved to cook and eat. And when I picked her up from the altar, I was like, really? You want to be here in this podcast? And it's because she loved to talk. There's an energy of you in Miss Sandra here. She loved to talk. She loved to tell her stories. She told such good stories. And so I kind of said to her, please let me channel some of that. I need to have some words today. I am someone who can be deeply in silence, deeply in the earth, deeply in a listening mode. I said, no, today, Sandra, I need to have some lyrics. So my sister Sandra, my daughter, Jenn, this kind of in these different spaces around the Atlantic, coming together in this one moment to support this conversation feels just right. Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome. We're welcoming your daughter. And Miss Sandra.
Yeah, Miss Sandra.
Yeah. And thank you for really landing and for your transparency. And I just can't help but wonder, if I may, what have you always been, and I'm saying this kind of cheeky, I'm trying to use all my British slang. Have you always been this sort of like rooted, deep, like what was little Foluke like? What was teenage Foluke? You don't have to tell us everything, of course, but just a snapshot or a sense of how you land. Who are you? Who are your people? And who is younger Foluke? That's a lot of questions in one. Feel free to pick whichever.
Yeah. Okay, let me sit with it for a minute. That is it's such a good question. Good because I haven't thought about this before. So that's how good it is. My first response, I wanted to say, and I don't know how this sounds, but the kind of groundedness or a kind of low, a register of kind of close to the ground, it can sometimes look like depression, I think. I think younger Foluke was kind of depressed because it didn't seem to fit the world. That way of being, it doesn't fit. People used to say things like, you're so serious. Can you not lighten up? I wish you could get more joy in your life. I mean, there were lots of reasons why it wasn't joyful. I was born into a lot of trouble, family trouble, world trouble. It wasn't easy. And in fact, writing is one of the things I learned to write when I was very young. And I have always written as a way of bringing the things that I think people didn't have the capacity to hear. They don't want to be serious. They don't want to hear a certain register of home until they do. So I'm hearing that I appreciate that now. And people say that to me now. People say, oh, I really like to listen to you. But it hasn't always been like that, no. So in fact, when I became a therapist and then I studied creative writing as a therapeutic, and I published the writing that I pulled together there, which is kind of memoir, but I like Audre Lorde's term biomythography, because in a way, sometimes it's really hard to write your story as an autobiography. Some things are too difficult to come at head on like that, to write them in a very straight way. So I was playing with the idea of like point of view, different voice, fictionalizing, putting the thing into a fairy tale, like just making it into a play, into a poem in these different chapters. And I called it How the Hiding Seek, because my experience of myself was of someone who wants to know the world but dare not ask about it. So I had to seek by observing, listening, paying attention, watching, learning, modeling. So I think younger me was much quieter. I think of myself, and maybe that's partly, there's like a trace of that left that I still maybe worry about sometimes, as if I'm not saying enough. But I think probably now that I come to be in conversation with you, I probably talk quite a lot. It's probably not quite true. It's probably one of those things that is this old story that sometimes feels as if it's still true. Maybe at times it is. So I think I'm still her, but I'm more able to be in the world. I'm more able to appreciate a certain register that is not like high, and it's not, it's not really high energy, but it's a necessary energy. And actually it's a tone, it's a baseline. I'm someone, I like baseline. I am a baseline, and it's fine, particularly given that we need each other to make music anyway. I don't have to be all the melodies, do I? I don't have to be every note. So yeah, I think I've just got more comfortable to be this. Maybe that transmits.
Oof. Be the baseline. Looking at be the baseline, and I had so many questions while you were talking, but again, the poetry that comes out of you, and I just don't want to ever stop it. I just want to receive it, right? And I think it's interesting just to reflect back and in transparency, perhaps at another, like a mirror, or that upside down mirror, or I don't know what to call it, but for me, it was very similar, except opposite, that like, ooh, you're too much, like tone it down. You're talking too much, you're out of your chair too much, you're making sounds out of nowhere too much, you're angry too much. And the taking up of space as a teen would often feel shameful, right? Because I was just being in joy, perhaps, or I really enjoyed something, or I saw a really fluffy animal and I would start squealing and jumping on the floor with it. And I can see how from the outside that might feel like theatrics. Or I had my heart broken and I was just like listening to Fiona Apple and like, I don't know, Linkin Park and Evanescence and like, just like sort of moping around and specifically wearing black. And I would say that mainstream, very Eurocentric, right? Psychology, you might say, or have told me, that's quite unhealthy, or that's like borderline behavior, or they give it some kind of box and to pathologize. And my parents might have said, oh, you're just a ham, or you always need to be the center of attention, or you just, and yet in growing up, it was admitting the parts of me that are larger than life, that are big, and that, much like you were saying, kind of knowing that maybe the world needs that too at times. Yeah. And that there are the right people and places and spaces that might love that about me. Right. And that welcome that.
I'm one of them. And I would have been one of them, because one of the things about me, one of the ways I learned was all of my friends, all the people I hung out with were the people who were out, like were loud and too much. And because I needed that. I needed that balance. I needed someone among us to be making noise and making a fuss and you know and crying out loud and being loud with their heartbreak and their rage and all of that. So absolutely, we need each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And I needed you. All my closest friends were these like really deep, softer, introverted thinkers that when I can be one-on-one, which is what I prefer, or in a smaller group, which I do prefer, I could land and be and feel like perhaps there was a tether there to something, right? Because I could feel like I'm floating at times. So, and it's funny because I don't even think we're meaning to, but we're talking about sisterhood. Right? We're talking about this relationality. And so I'm also wondering, what does it feel like for younger Foluke to want to be heard so much now? What does it, how does that land for you that folks like me and others dying to hear from you, or just like clawing to hear more from you and want to, read your work and absorb this really beautiful baseline, grounded root magic that you bring?
I guess we're all full of contradictions, huh? There is definitely one who is excited by that. It's like, yeah, I want to share and show and feel what it does in you. I want to feel what this does. I know what it does in me as it's coming through me. So to kind of have that experience reflected back is, wonderful and inspiring and exciting. And at the same time, I guess we can say excitement and fear are opposite, the different sides of the same coin. And there's a lot of fear about not being enough, of course, or getting... My friends laugh when I say this. So I say, like, getting carried away. They say, how's that ever going to be you getting carried away? I wish you would get carried away. But I mean that I guess it's the thing you said about floating and tether. I love those words that you use because I like to be tethered. I like to feel tethered. And that's great. But sometimes I think what it does is limit the possibilities. So what I learned about myself as I published Unruly was how reluctant I was to be out in the world sharing it. Do you want to do this event in a bookshop? No. Do you want to be at this festival? No. So I've had to really reckon with that and contend with that and hear back something I often say to people that I work with around writing, particularly when we're writing collectively, that don't think that what you write is just for you. It might not even be for you.
Cool.
And where you sit on it and say, oh, it's not very good, or no, I can't possibly share, I'm not a writer. Do you know what you might be denying to somebody else? Like, if we can move our I aside for a little while, we get closer to something that is we, or maybe I and I, if you like, but just we get closer to really, it's not about us. It's about what's coming through, what needs to be said, how it is said differently in all these different bodies and beings and manifestations, and what's to say that your delivery, your saying of it does not need to be in the world. So I think what I'm saying is I've had to grow up. I've had to go, okay, you're a bit shy. Okay, you don't always want to be, or you can feel a kind of resistance to public platforms and stages and screens. But actually, the work is doing something. The people that write to you an email and approach and want to talk about the book, you know something is happening. It's not about you. It's about what are its resonances? What are its ripples in the world? What else can happen that's nothing to do with you? You won't even know it. Things will be happening. You don't even need to know what's happening. So I'm kind of working in that constant, in that space between float and tether. And again, we need each other. Other people help me that will sometimes, I guess, step in, reassuring me that the tether is there so that I can float. So that I dare to be, yeah, my work, here it is. Yeah, have a read, have a share. What do you think? So yeah, it's interesting in terms of what the book is teaching me. And I literally about last month I was in conversation with Alexis Pauline Gum. She came here to promote the Survival is a Promise book, Audre Lorde's biography. And I asked her what she had learned from her book. And she said, well, that is still happening, because actually until the moment where you maybe get to read the audio book, you're not really receiving it. You're always changing it or editing it or rearranging it. But at the moment you read the audio book, because we were sharing that experience, I recorded my own audio book, then you get to receive it. But that's only the first receiving. And I really admired the way that she really knew her book. And I realized, I need to know my book more. I think I was a little bit like, thank goodness, it's done. Okay, off you go, bye. And actually, this is a process, and you're reading that part of my work back to me, I think is a gift to me, because I had said, I need to read it again. I need to read my work again and receive it differently. So yeah, this feels like a pivot back to me. The book is in the world, but it needs to be in this world here differently as well. So I can't even remember what your question was, honestly, Jenn. So, let's just hope that somewhere in all of that, there was a response that makes sense. Yeah.
There was. And I think that's the beauty. I don't even think it's about a full circle. I think it's about, kind of creating this pathway, right? And that's sort of one of the things for me that I so dig about you and some of the mutual connections we have and friends and people that are becoming my friends, and is this beauty of trusting, not just, I'm trusting the process, right? But this truly kind of guttural, ancestral, older energy of I'm trusting the process because this is in my bones. I'm trusting the process because this is what my people have done. Trusting the process because I know that you're there to tether me and to also push me to fly. Trusting the process because I think we're constantly in this mutuality with others that can see us and our work, right? And these aspects of ourselves, right? These effigies, these pieces of ourselves that we put out there into the world. And so I don't know, what I was hearing you say is that there's part of connectivity that leads to liberation, even if you didn't use these words. There's this connection with other that allows us to liberate ourselves a little bit more. And in this liberating of ourselves a bit more, and this like uncensoring of ourselves just a bit more, we gift to others and give them the absolute fucking permission to be like, oh, okay, Foluke can do that. right? That was a mix of poetry and prose and memoir and Black feminism and all this goodness and therapeuticness. Well, there's this beautiful thing, this living inside of me. How might I want to share that with the world? And so I know that upon meeting you, and I might have said this to you already, Foluke, there was something about your presence that gave me permission, period. I don't know what the rest of that sentence is. Permission to, permission in. I don't know. But and do I need to know? But I just want to say there's something about your presence and space, that your vibration, your energy that just felt like sister and mother and permission to be different, to be weird, to be unruly. And I'm not saying that on purpose. Like, literally, I just think it's such, I've been using the word so much since I've met you. I'm like, yes, fuck yeah. The unruliness, there's something about it. And even the word, the ruler in childhood and school. And there's something about it that's just really romantic and sexy on the tongue and in my spirit when I think about it. And you were saying,
I really hope that it gives permission, or give permission. It's kind of suggests there is permission. Permission is there for the taking, or I think I talk about it in the book as like a self-authorization. What are we waiting for? Authorize ourselves to do or to move in the way we need to move. And I often talk about that 10 years that we spent in the Gambia, because I learned so much about authorization, self-authorization, and permission. And I think I talk about this in the chapter that's called, what's it called? Earth-eyed and squinting. It's talking about the road. For those who say the road has no rhythm, something like that. It's the second chapter. And because these were major lessons that I needed to learn about road, how to move around in this new space that I don't know. The geography of it is so different. I'm born in London, raised in London. It's all like tarmac, concrete, straight roads, numbers on the roads, this is how we move around. But there, aside from the main road, highway, which wasn't even finished, everything is red earth. And there's no numbers. And that's not how we move around. So often there's a lot of kind of collaboration. You have to stop and ask people the way. Do you know where this person lives? Do you know where this is? And they would say, yes, go straight, follow the road. You'll pass this tree and then you follow the road. And then we were driving, big old, rusty old kind of car, had no power steering or anything. It was really heavy, really hard to drive, and it was sand. And then the road would like fork, or there'd be a crossroads. And so how could they say follow the road? Why did they not say turn right or turn left? How would I know how to follow the road? And in the end, we had to keep asking, and somebody got in and they pointed to the sand and said, can't you see the road? And what they were pointing to was the tracks, where people have walked, or animals have walked, or tires have passed, or cycles. That, of course, there's more than one road, but the road is where the people have gone before. It's the worn path. That's the road. So I had to learn to see the road. And then the other experience was around going to the market every day, because electricity was a problem. So fresh food every day, you go and choose what you're going to cook for lunch. And the market's really, really busy, and there's just like thousands of people moving around. And the word in Wolof for road is yon. And you would hear yon, 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 yon. And it means somebody needs a road. They're coming with a wheelbarrow. They're coming with a big load of something. And the road has to be people moving apart, people moving. The crowd opens to make a road. So these ideas of like following a road I think you have to see it. And I think living in London, living in the global north, living in kind of colonial conditions, it kind of concretizes your seeing. It layers over what you can see. So it's almost like you have to break through that to see the life that's underneath. And the other thing it does is kind of individualize your hearing and your embodiment. So it's just me moving around the market. Why would I pay attention to what other people are doing? I need to go and buy fish and cassava to cook. And we can't hear the road as individual. We can't make roads as individual. Well, they're like collective activities, collective endeavors. And so that was very freeing in terms of permission to move in a different way, to not take the straight path, to understand that pathways live. And I think in the book I talk about it as like an instinctual wayfinding or waymaking, where it's never going to be the same twice. You have to stay connected, stay with your squint. I call it an earth-eyed squint. It's kind of referencing Amata Edu, who talked about a black-eyed squint. But just trying to see the world, in this way that supports your life, rather than in a very colonial kind of grid-like. Of course, we go from A to B by the quickest route. That must be the road. So yeah, permission. I would hope that in my unruly path, this felt right to me. I wrote this book in a particular way that didn't have a plan. It was following a particular sense of where to go, guided by Black feminist literature and scholarship. But I hope that it does give permission for people to wayfind instinctually for themselves, because that is unique. And I have no idea where those paths go or what they open or what they make possible for me or for all of us. So yeah, I hope it's not a model, more of a kind of anti-model, if you like, or just like a dance move. And like maybe you like the dance move, and so you make your own.
Yeah. I'm hoping, as folks are listening out there, that you give yourself permission to close your eyes. I know that I have the need to close my eyes a lot, or look down, or just like really be in my body and notice how Foluke's words run through you or create pathways or roads in and through you. And I couldn't help but wonder, even though I want to make the assumption, this is a thing lately, Foluke, that I've been saying to myself, well, I hear myself say, well, I know. I might not be saying it, but there's somewhere in my body that, I know who or what Foluke's talking about when, she's talking about Black feminists, and I'm like, no, actually, what would it look like to ask? What would it look like, right? For myself and my hyperness sometimes, to want to know a person and be connected to a person. I realized that that's the ways that I really enjoyed being a therapist, was I got to sit back and ask a lot and get curious and remember that I don't need to know shit, right? To really be in these spaces. And so I have these warring questions that are in my spirit to ask you. But what wants to come out now is who are some of the Black feminists that made roads for you? Yeah. And why?
Yeah. Wow, I've got so many places and people to draw from here that it's almost, it's like being in I'm a kind of book nerd. It's like being in a big library and like just shelves full of, I could have it all. But I suppose let me start local, close, and I think very early on. I'm not sure. It's probably in the introduction. This is showing you how I don't know my book as well as I should. I write into a quote from my friend, colleague, good sister, Black feminist, currently at Yale professor, but actually she's London born and raised, and like me, Dr. Gail Lewis. And partly because local and because we get to actually hang out together and eat together and, just be in an ordinary kind of living space. She's a huge influence to me. But also because she is, I think you just wouldn't know who she is. It's very hard to find out. Like, she would never say, oh yeah, actually I wrote this. Oh, actually I did that. Oh yeah, actually I was she was part of the Black feminist organizing in this country in the kind of 70s and 80s, 1970s and 80s. Not that I'm a huge fan of first this and first that, but actually really, really significant kind of Black women's groups and kind of organizations that since lots of people have written about. But she's just so unassuming and so down to earth and so caring. And I drew on her. She's also a psychotherapist. And I drew on a paper that she wrote about Black feminism as an object of play. Mm-hmm. That what if we took Black feminism, she was thinking with some of the kind of psychoanalytic theorists like Bion and Winnicott, around play and what that might mean. But yeah, what if we took Black feminism as an object of play? And it was that kind of sparked a sense of a kind of lightness with these texts and, readings that were they're serious. They're about serious stuff. They're also beautiful. But what, instead of grasping at trying to understand something, how we get kind of caught in academia, or I talk about it sometimes as how the reading that was once forbidden becomes forbidding. So, you can read now if you like. It's not against the law. There are no codes telling you that you can't learn to read. But it's the way in which it's taught or offered, or the text in which you're invited to engage with are forbidding. They keep you out in a certain way. And I wanted to see, is there a way of being with them a bit more playfully or a little bit more loosely, so that I'm not trying to grasp at what they mean. Good. I'm not trying to tell people this means that. I'm just allowing myself to be with it and see what it might mean in this being, in this body, in this moment, in this space. And yeah, what pathways it makes. So Gail Lewis was definitely one, and then the book is full of all kinds of other, inspirational Black feminists, bell hooks, Saidiya Hartman, Christina Sharp, Dion Brand. I love poets. I love poetry. It's full of people who might not even consider themselves to be Black feminists, like Fred Moten, like Franck Etienne, who was a Haitian kind of novelist who coined this idea of spiralism, which means writing that doesn't stick to genre, can move between, a kind of journalistic piece, fiction, poetry, polemic. So, yeah, I'm not sure everybody in there would even think of themselves as Black feminists, but, I think I gave myself permission. I authorized myself to play with their work as if. So yeah, that's just some of them.
Yeah. And it brings up this question of who gets to be a Black feminist? Not that there's an answer to that or that we get to answer that, but it's when I had my brief week or so in London recently, in some of the English countryside, where I got to hug you and say hello to you and some of our other loved ones. I had this lovely post-dinner hangout in the lounge of my hotel with our my new friend and your dear friend, Robert Downs. And we were sitting there listening to music. He's got great taste in music. And we were like bonding over our taste in music. And I'm not sure how Robert would identify other than him sharing with me being Irish and understanding his whiteness and maleness. And we're having conversations about all that, right? And he's like, I'm a Black feminist, you know? And I was like, and we got into this deep convo around it. And I was like, tell me more. Wait, I'm so fascinated by this. He's like, yeah, we've got to be. And here, you know, and that convo, it was just so filling, you know, to have these kind of conversations with folks. But I wondered for folks that are like, wait, can I be a Black feminist? What does that look like? What does that mean? I just wondered your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, you remind me of another great inspiration who's also in the book, whose work I also write with, is Jennifer Nash. And I think at the beginning I talk about this through her work, and she talks about Black feminism as not being limited to those who might identify as women or identify as Black. It's actually bigger and more than that. And Marcus Bay, who's also talked about trans Black feminism a lot, that actually this failure to think from or feel from this exclusion of Black women, something called Black and woman, from how we think about the world and what it is and what it might be and what it needs to be, is a failure for all of us. It's actually missing for, in fact, as Black women, maybe we have access to it in a way more than some people who really need it. They really need it. I recently read a letter from a Black man, I think he was African American, talking about Dear Black Feminism, talking about his relationship with Black feminism. Well, no, he was talking to Black men about Black feminism, really inviting a relationship. We need to get into this. We need to stop thinking that it's not about us, or that it's irrelevant to us. Because sometimes I think Black men do think it's about them, but in a very negative way. They think it's about attempting to exclude them or pull them down or kind of disrespect them in some way, rather than actually this is a way of critiquing all of these constructions of gender and race that actually don't really help you, because they're not shaped in the way that they're not shaped for you. A man, I'm getting very kind of philosophical here, but thinking like Sylvia Wynter, a man is fashioned white. What we think of as a man is a particular fashioning of man. He's white and he's straight and he makes all the money and he owns property and he manages his nuclear family, which is, he's in control of. And actually that model of man has been such a part of our education, not only our formal education, but everything we see in terms of media, in terms of the stories we're told, in terms of what we learn is a correct formation of family and personhood, is in this shape. So actually, Black men, I have 3 sons who are all men, Black men. I'm married to a Black man. I want to make this clear that this is coming with love. Actually, you were excluded from that category. Now, do you want to inherit this category that you were excluded from? Because you might want to think about that. From where I'm sitting, it's not that. It doesn't it's not liberating. Go back to your word about it. It's not liberating. It's capture. It's capture, and I think Black feminism is one of the modes that can help us critique this and think about it and loosen it and make space. I mean, that's why it's called Practices in Living Room. Make room for practices of freedom. Define yourself. Give yourself permission. Authorize yourself. However you describe yourself, authorize yourself.
Authorize yourself. Authorize yourself. And in that, I don't know if you're also meaning or intending, or perhaps this is the beautiful opening of like authorizing oneself, right? And your gift in this work and in your words are allowing me to authorize myself to also say, I want to be in this living room. Like I want to, whatever that looks like. I want to live in a space. And that's what I got from reading your book. And I fall in love a lot. And I say that like with books, with trees, with people, like I love. Yeah. And even with the hardening and the violence and the rage that I allow myself to be in relationship with constantly, I know that as Brother Lamarad says, love and rage really do go hand in hand. And so in falling in love with this work, and this is through your work is how I met you actually, right? Through a mutual publishing house. Yeah. And in being introduced to this and it landing in my doorstep, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, even better, I don't know who this person is, and just like kind of diving in. And I remember sitting in my corner in the couch over there with my cat Isis wrapped, in between me. And I'm literally like, oh, I'm a person that like makes sound, like kind of call and response energy. And I'm talking to no one and everyone and every ancestor in me, 7 generations before and after me. I threw the book with love, with like passionate love. I picked it up. I danced. I sobbed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I also highlighted, underlined, and had to chew and walk away and come back. But I lived in that room that you constructed for us. And I feel emotional saying that. And I don't know why, but thank you. And so you were talking about chapter 2. So I thought, I'm just going to go to chapter 2 and just open to a page. And it's funny because this was one. I was going to ask you, what is your definition of unruly? And so instead I open, and here we are, page 20, chapter 2, Earth-Eyed and Squinting. And y'all, come on, like beloved root to bone listener, let me just for a second, hold on. I'm going to fan person for just a second of these contents. I might say, fuck your table of contents, but instead contents, right? Number 1 is starting with play, because thicker is better and being lost has its moments. 2, earth-eyed and squinting, for the people who said the road had no rhythm. 3, living it, when in theory the space is uninhabitable. 4, poetic possibility, the questions you can ask once you realize interrogation isn't working. Come on now. Sorry. You see, I get reactions. I just can't help it. Okay. Hold on. I'm trying to be all cool like you. And meanwhile, I'm like, okay. 5, black grounds. Did y'all hear me? Black grounds. Bend down low and don't forget who swept this floor already. That's when I threw it, when I was reading that chapter. Surviving. Number 6, surviving. Makes me want to pull up a chair sometimes. 7, bloodlines and trap doors. The trouble with looking like the rootsy type. 8, motherlands, but the M is in parentheses. Yeah, so other lands, motherlands. Looking for who made this mess. 9, deep shade, poor lighting, and other ways that we are not safe. 10, critique with like create, like critique. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Critical grounding for therapeutic writing. And 11, crossroads, picking up, putting down, and scattering. And then this awesome ass quote from Alexis Pauline Gumbs, Dub. You say, call the people you've been thinking about calling. Do the things your pummeling heart says do. Let the lessons forming lesions be less real to you than children. Make room. But I'm going to read again.
I'd read that book.
You wrote that fucking book, okay? Wait. So, unruly, because folks might be, yeah, so I and this might be a bit of a projection, but I feel also like even with the book that came through me, decolonizing therapy, the thought is like, read it, skim it, jump to a page. Like, I want people to be with it in a way that feels right for them. Like, I don't need them to read it in this very colonial time way from beginning to end, right? And sure, there's that part in me, that colonial root in me that is like, yeah, read it from beginning to end. Please start at the beginning and end at the end. But there's this other aspect of me that knows that we get what we need, right, in these moments, and to take space and to step away. And so in this book, sometimes I have done that. And sometimes I've like, nope, going to start here to end. But almost always I found myself continuing to ask, yeah, what is unruly? Where do I need to be more unruly? And what exactly does that mean? And so I kept chewing and kind of gargling that question. And you were talking about it before. And so you write, unruly, queer, outlaw, crooked, unpredictable. The path that Black life makes as it moves and breathes through a world that refuses its moving and breathing, the again and again leaps of invention necessary to live. What survives? What theorizes itself as a therapeutic because it survives? What finds no way and makes its way? The ways that discourse in spirituality and diasporic consciousness, the ways that refuse to be refused, unruly, ways of seeing, sensing, knowing, and being, many ways and roads, white lines that bend underground, centers that shift, maps written in sand, unruly, marinage, a freedom verb, movement of the people, the spirit of the crowd, yawn, 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 unruly as road, a not yet road, a living road, a feeling road, a right with road, the road of our chaotic together apartness, the road that is always becoming unruly. Make a way.
I so appreciate you throwing my book. It gave me the affect. Affect is one of the things, isn't it, that our field struggles with, which is odd given that, just given the history of the therapeutic project and psychoanalysis. How come feeling affect is so pressured? It's so like tight and not allowed. So when you described throwing the book, it gave me something that, I felt something. I felt something. Yes. I didn't know I wanted people to throw my book, but now I do. Exactly that. And maybe I should try that myself. So I just will put a book down and close my eyes and kind of go, which is sometimes why it takes me so long to read. If a book is really something, it will take me forever. I'm forever putting it down and trying to digest and be with and let it hang out with me. So it's the best compliment. It's just like the best feedback. Thank you for that.
And I hope I do it with love and with the intensity of like fuck yeah. Like it's so good. I can't touch it anymore in this moment. Like throwing my hat or something, it's just like taking off my jacket. Or one of my beloved sister friends, Glenifer, literally, I have to insert this. We were at this cute little restaurant somewhere. I don't know, it was St. Louis. And Glenifer was one of my students many, many years ago, and now a sister friend. And she would love me saying this story. She's a glorious Black trans woman, and she gets so excited and got so excited at this restaurant and loved the food so much that she pulled off her wig and threw it. And we and we were like, yes, bitch, get it. Like, it was such a moment of like, she looked at me and she looked at me and she's just like, bitch. And then, threw it, and I didn't cook the food. So, I just the place, and we had to call the chef out and just like be like, dude, what are you putting in this? You put your whole foot in it. And so you put your whole foot in it, as my grandma might say, like, I don't know if that's a very American, Black American term or not, or if y'all get down with it too.
I have never heard that, but I can totally get it.
Thank you for putting your foot in it. You did the damn thing, we would say, right? Like, and like, it's just to the bone, to the core, it is deeply unruly. And so how do you, Foluke, if you can tell our listeners, like, how do we bring together these, and I love paradoxes, right? Like the unruly and the therapeutic, right? Because in so many ways, therapeutic can be completely out of boxes and out of line. But as you were just beautifully saying, there's also this limit, this sort of conditioning with some of us that have been trained to be psychotherapists, therapists, psychologists, social workers, to sort of be in these boxes and sort of do this manualized version of therapeuticness, right? Or so that's how I was taught, right? Like, sort of bring it in and be really neutral and really apolitical, and just don't bring too much affect into the space. You want them to feel, but the feeling, without it being said, sort of needs to look and sound in these ways. Otherwise, red flag, or, kind of put that in the back of your hat. What is that about? To analyze. And I wonder if analysis can be unruly. And it's just question. I just have so many questions. And so for you, where and do the unruly and the therapeutic meet and marry and dance together?
Well, as you were reading, I heard a line that clearly I wrote, but I heard it again, like, unruly is the therapeutic that it is the therapeutic because it survived. Something about, before therapy, something called therapy, there were also really hard times, difficult struggles, hurts, harms, losses. And again, Fred Moten says this: whatever we love has survived this dispossession. Everything we love has survived this dispossession. So there's something about the therapeutic that is not called, or may not have the name therapeutic, that has always been moving because we survive. And then I put that next to, yes, we are taught a certain way of being, to make certain interventions, certain diagnoses, treatment plans, to work in a particular way. But in my experience, we don't necessarily survive that well. When I say we, I'm talking about the practitioners. I mean, what happens to the people who came for the support or treatment or help? We'll leave that for a minute. I'm talking about us as practitioners. So you might meet people who want to move in that very kind of sanctioned, standard, formalized way, but look at them good. Are they really surviving? Are they people are they feeling good about what they're doing? Is it giving them life? Are they feeling like, wow, this is absolutely me practicing freedom and being the one that I want to be and feeling the world? Does it feel like making music to them? Probably not. So I think there's something about I would say what breaks. You're right. Maybe analysis can be practiced in an unruly way. If we allow something to break, I think the problem is there's a lot of preciousness about the frame. What analysis is, what psychotherapy is, which keeps it from, there's a determination to keep it from breaking. And when I say that, breaking open, allowing other ways of seeing and being in, allowing, other people, other folk in even. So if we keep that rigid frame, no, that's not unruly. But I think what happens is we can't sustain in it. Either we break or it breaks. Now, of course, there's going to be exceptions. There's going to be someone, emailing you after this podcast saying, no, I'm an analyst and it works fine for me. And I've been doing it for like 25 years and I'm black and down and it's all good. Okay, let me just preempt that. There are always exceptions. But in my experience of working with people, and a lot of the people that I work with are themselves working therapeutically or artists doing particular kinds of work that they might speak of as kind of healing or space making. That life does not do well in these tight frames. And it is, it's like, it's got busting out energy and it busts out. And then I think we get the analytic, whatever that is unruly and that can give us life. So I understand why people want to follow a straight path, why they want to be accepted and seen as doing the right thing. Proper therapists. We want to be proper because if you're not proper, you don't, that's a very London thing, isn't it? Proper. You don't say
it is, but I'm loving it.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. So yeah, we want to be proper. Like it's got to be right so that we are, close to the bag, getting the income, getting the status, doing well. But in terms of our own sense of feeling alive and feeling good and well, yeah, not so much.
Yeah. And isn't that important for us as psychotherapist, practitioner, space holder? Isn't it important for us to, or maybe I should phrase it another way, is it important for us to feel alive as well in this work?
Well, I think I talked about Gail Lewis, and we've co-written a chapter which will be published, I think it's due in May next year, but it's called Lively Up We Self. And it's about that liveliness, like Black feminism and the liveliness that it insists on and how that might live in our therapy rooms, how that lives, what that means. And I'm sure I shouldn't assume you have this experience, but I think I've read enough. I remember enough of your book to know that I know you spoke about this experience that people are doing all kinds of things in their therapy rooms. They don't necessarily talk about it because that's not going to go down well in the supervision group or when you're writing your paper. But actually, what is happening in the room between you and the people that you are collaborating with is often something else, is life, is lively. And I suppose probably at this stage, I'm old enough to not care that much that people don't think I'm proper. So I do understand that at a different stage in your life or in your kind of working career, you maybe feel you have to take a bit more care. But in the end, what I would love is for us to kind of grow those muscles that more and more allow ourselves to be unruly and transmit that in some way, maybe to each other. What does it do when you think you're breaking all the rules and then you speak to somebody else and they go, oh yeah, no, that's how I work. Or In fact, this is what's going on. That transmission, I understand why we need to do things on the down low. Well, sometimes I do. And however we do it, then we need to think about how this is transmitted, how these practices are transmitted, how these permissions are transmitted, so that that permission grows. And I think it's working. I think your book, how I see people engage with your work, and I mean, and also in my work, but like younger therapists, students, the things that they are thinking about and organizing seem to me to be much more self-authorized than when I was coming up at that time. I think. I mean, even if it's me being optimistic, so be it. I believe that something is building, and really is building. The room is building, and I am here for that.
Yeah. Yes, I'm here for it too. And thank you for all of that. And even the word self-authorizing, I'm just like chewing on that and letting that land. That really feels crystal clear. It feels clear for me. And as you're speaking about our newer incoming therapist and what they're here to do, like I realize when reading your beautiful book, the first thought I had was, fuck, I should have let myself be even more unruly in writing this, right? Like true moment, right? Like just being real about it. Just like there was a bit of like a critical voice I had for a second of like, I should have broke more rules in writing this. I should have allowed myself should, right? And then of course I had to forgive myself and have a little bit more self-compassion. But the thought was, oh, it's so heady, it's so this, it's so that, and about my own work. And then I dove into it and allowed myself to realize that version of me needed to come out as well, right? That all parts of me, the jointed and the disjointed, needed to come out in that way, in that particular text for some reason. And much like you, I don't feel like I'm so personal with it. It was part of me for so long that it was almost like I wanted to eject it from my body and like not look at it. And that could be for a lot of reasons that we won't get into right now, but there was lots of aspects for me.
Can I just say though, about your book? So of course we need to write what we need to write in any moment, and what comes next might be completely different, or, we spiral, don't we, into different kind of ways of being and with different experiments. But also some people really needed that. They needed it like that. And I have somebody who's been in one of my groups for a long time, trainee psychotherapist. And she said to me, yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't really understand your book. I'm sorry. I just want things like, I just want people to tell me something like, some information that I can actually just, download and make sense of. So I just think, there's just not a one size fits all. This is the beauty of it is. I mean, again, I know I keep going on about living in the Gambia, but I swear to you, I grew up there like in a way I can't quite describe. But I learned something about language and translation, that because obviously it's a space where it's been colonized, the whole continent. So there are official languages. Gambia is inside Senegal, but the official language is English. But Senegal, which surrounds it entirely, the official language is French. Between these spaces, there are many, many different languages. Wolof, Mandinka, Jola, Fula, lots of languages. So you have this situation where people often speak 2 or 3 languages. People don't necessarily speak the same languages. So that in a group, sometimes I might say something or somebody will say something. Somebody else will translate what they said in this language. Eventually it will get to me or I will say it Somebody will say it in French. Somebody will say it in Mandinka. And I realized, yeah, that's what we need. Instead of insisting on a kind of uniformity, we all have to speak the same language. No, we don't. If we can help each other to understand what's going on. And it was such a common practice that I think people didn't even think about it. They didn't even notice that they were doing it. And I think of books or ways of saying something like that. I don't think there's anything in my book that you didn't say in your book.
Whoa.
You know, we are speaking the same truths. We are talking to the same set of conditions. We are pressing towards the same practices of freedom. And the language we use is different, and that's good because we need to spread it as widely as we can.
Yes.
And be in sisterhood.
Well, yes. I'm just receiving that and leaving some space for that. Do you have capacity for like one or two more questions?
Yeah.
I'm just checking with your body, your mind, your spirit. And there's a little bit of anticipation. So I like to say anticipation is like this mix of like anxiety and fear in asking this. Because of course you can't speak for all Black British women and right. But there is something there around. So I'm just gonna let the question pop out. I'm gonna allow it to land, and we'll see how it rises for you or not. So one of the first things I wonder when I think of sisterhood, right, and I think about this what that looks like across the Atlantic, and for me and many other Black women and others that have come to be grouped as maybe Black Americans or African Americans, even if we choose not to and keep pulling ourselves out of that box, right? For those of us of the African diaspora that have been brought to Turtle Island, there is such a kind of energy around, especially what is currently happening in our lands. Yeah, not just with government, but with government. And this sense of like, this kind of energy of like, no, we're going to rest now, right? And some of that, thank goodness, Nat Minister and so many others that are doing this work and talking about rest as resistance, but also this sense of like, we have put in so much work. And there's sort of this, like, again, this unsaid larger kind of conversation, some in social media, some within circles, some within like, nope, I'm reclaiming my joy. Let the white women step up. And then others like, okay, what happens when white women step up? And let's look at the polls and the numbers. Like, that's what happens when majority of white women step up, right? More violence, right? And I'm generalizing, right? I know that I am. It's always, right? But I'm wondering what you, Foluke, with your positionality and your identities, how you walk in the world with your peoples and your experience, in this place and this time, is there any thought or feelings or any words to Black women in what we now know as America?
Yeah. Well, okay, let me receive that question. Black women in America. Let me qualify everything that I'm going to say. I don't know America.
Liz.
I don't know. But I think I do, because America, from where I'm standing, and I think it's a really reality to this, is US empire. We are all in US empire, and we have been raised in US empire. So some part of me thinks I do know America. I've been raised with it. I've watched it. I've seen it. I've listened to it. I've read it. It's everywhere. It's everything. But I think we have to be careful about that. What is sold to us as being Black America? in fact? And is that really what, just how does that reflect what Black America is versus how does that reflect what US empire needs Black America to appear as to the rest of us? And there's a book by Erica Edwards that I read recently called The Other Side of Terror, Black Women and US Empire. I think she's at Yale as well. It really made me think about this projection of the image of Black women and how it's twisted to almost to kind of redeem US empire. Like, so I'm kind of thinking about that, and I'm thinking about rest as resistance. I love that work. I love listening to, Trisha Hersey is another person whose voice, I just want to listen to her. I just want to listen to her being like, just telling people about themselves and telling people to go and lay down and, and I totally get it. Yeah, be what white supremacy does not want you to be. Be something else. But from my position here, and I think London, I don't know how you experienced it when you were here, but it is the heart of a kind of Black diaspora that clearly we are closer to the African continent. We're Europe, then we've got America on the other side. So there's this kind of hub of diaspora that means it's less easy for us to be very kind of separate. As in, we're this kind of Black or we're that kind of Black. There are specificities, but there's also a shared kind of ground. And I think it means that we feel the connection to other geographical spaces very closely. And I know this is true for a lot of Black women in America too, but I'll just name it. We can't pretend we're not living in a time of genocides. We are completely, utterly implicated, connected, absolutely in what is happening in Gaza and Palestine and Sudan and Yemen and Congo. This is the reality. So that the Black Americans, the African Americans that I know largely are ones who have traveled, who I think might see themselves as part of a diaspora, who are interested in transnational and like global links. A lot of us who lived in the Gambia together, who formed a kind of African homecoming collective, where we get to see that, of course, we're different. There are specificities, specific things, and rather than, we're encouraged to see difference in these hierarchical sense, aren't we? Like categories, species, hierarchies. But there are other ways to be with difference in the way that we have our unique, specific manifestations, and they are beautiful. But we're not different as in we have to be against each other. And we're not so different that we can't study and speak about and study together our shared conditions. And I'd say then if there are Black women in America who see them or feel themselves as completely disconnected to that ground, our shared conditions, I would invite them in. I'd invite you all in, because I don't think this works. I think we all understand something that's like kind of increased fungibility, where whoever they're coming for, know that they are coming for you too. Whatever you see happening over there will reach where you are. Our fates are interconnected. What happens to them will happen to you. Do you know what I mean? So that however insulated you might feel, however you might be offered as the cheerleaders for US empire, this is not safe ground. I would say, check that ground. Just, you might need us. We might need each other.
Thank you. for all of it. And I love all the qualifiers, and I love all that, right? Because that's what it all is, right? That there's so many of them. Thank you for that. Thank you. And in our wrap up today, my question for you, dear Foluke, is what generational quality, could be gift, could be little tchotchke or thing, what generational thing might your people have passed on to you that you believe you're here to share with the world? Like, what is and maybe there's so many, and maybe it's like you're grasping for one, but what might be one thing that you kind of bring with you into this work, into this space? I feel like it's like a full circle. It's like we're honoring you, we're honoring your book, we're in this conversation, we're talking about the sisterhood, the across the miles, we're talking about this unruly living room space, and in it, I don't know, I'm kind of offering you to kind of close the door and lay a rose or something, a rock at the door as we walk away from this space. As we walk away from this space and honor it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking about a line that I wrote in the book when I was, I spent a long time looking for my birth parents. And my father was particularly elusive, hard to find for lots of reasons to do with migration and colonialism and how names get changed to fit in particular spaces and on all of this stuff. But he was Nigerian, Yoruba. I'm in relationship with my siblings who live in Lagos, which is where he lived. He lived some of the time in England, but a lot of time in Lagos. And I think growing up without those genealogies felt like a real disadvantage. It felt like a real missing. Like, actually, there's something really missing. I'm a bit floaty. I'm untethered. Because I can't name all of these ancestors on either side. I can't say, oh, this grandmother and that grandmother. And I used to be deeply envious of people who could. And so I thought that's what I was looking for. I'm looking for roots. I'm looking to be fixed. I'm looking to be located in a place. So when I found them and I went to Lagos and hung out there, I was really like, yeah, this is it. I kind of know what it's about. And then we had this conversation about the name, which wasn't really a Yoruba name. He was Yoruba, but not a Yoruba name. And my sister said to me, oh, yeah, because, 3 generations ago, we came from Freetown. And actually, you look at the history of Freetown is a place where people came from everywhere. People came from North America after the Civil War. People in the processes of who'd been kidnapped, were kind of on their way to being enslaved, were redirected to Freetown. So Freetown is this place that is really impossible to know where somebody actually comes from. And so in a way, the gift to me, and in the book, I think I talked about it as like, I hover above the Atlantic. I will let go of the need to fix myself, to belong somewhere, to be classified, to make it simple for people, to give them a simple story that fits with nation state or race or any of that. I'm just going to hover, and I'm going to make home and make belonging with all my unbelonging. So I think in that way, that feels like a gift that I received myself, that sometimes I can feel like that is a gift also. There are many ways, even people who I thought were fixed, who seem to know who they are or their families and where they come from. Yeah, actually, that sense of not quite belonging, not quite fitting is really very common. Maybe it's a kind of universal somewhere. I don't know. So I think that was a gift to me that I hope I get to carry some sense of that and offer that possibility for others. What if home is where you are, is you? What if all of your unbelonging, once you make room for it, is the belonging?
What if all of your belonging, once you make room for it, is your belonging? Thank you. Thank you for the gift that is you. Thank you for the gift that is your tetheredness. Thank you for helping us to be inspired to find our own roads and the roads that have been already walked, trotted on, the paths that people have, consciously or not, opened for us. Thank you for the roads and the journey that you are allowing so many of us to have a little bit more freedom to be in and to play in and to dance in and to kind of love in and struggle with and around. Thank you so much, Foluke. Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to remind folks listening, and if you're thinking, oh, who was that person? Or what about that book that myself and Triple, our amazing producer for the Root to Bone podcast, will put in as many show notes as we can and names and information so that you can have access to these amazing trailblazers as well, and other Black feminists and other references that Foluke and I have been mentioning. And please remember that we'll never again be in this place, in this space, at this time, doing whatever you're doing at home, listening to these two people with this energy in the world, right? With whatever is going on in your own home, car, school, on that treadmill, wherever you're listening. And to be in the moment at this place and time. And that's its own kind of special, unruly liberation as well. You know, just landing here. So thank you for being. Thank you for coming. Thank you for arriving. Thank you for going. Thank you for landing. And deep, deep gratitude for Foluke Taylor and your work in this world and just your essence, spirit, energy, who you are as a person. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
I can't not say thank you back to you, Jenn. Thank you for the invitation. And keep it short. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you to the listeners who I don't yet know. They're not yet, are they? The listeners are the ones who are not yet. Thank you to the sister who was not yet, who now is, Dr. Jennifer Mullen. And the practices of sisterhood that have been brought into being here. I appreciate you deeply.
Likewise. Thank you. And thank you all. Please make sure to resource yourselves. I'm hella big on asking folks to resource themselves because although I don't think either of us, I have to go back and look at the show notes, but I don't think either of us have mentioned, maybe we've talked around it and we're implying, but I don't know if we've said the word trauma. Yeah, I know. Not that I'm aware of. And that's kind of fucking beautiful and interesting. And yet, and that even that the sisterhood is not just based or embedded in, right, the trauma, the traumas, but just, yeah, that's a whole other podcast episode that we'll invite Foluke back for. But
oh yeah, please.
But again, folks listening, that even if we're not directly talking about specific sorts or namings of traumas or things, please remember that things might be moving in your body. Please remember to resource yourself, to drink that beautiful water, to move the body in whatever ways that you can or that you're resourced to do. Be silly, listen to some Prince, I don't know, to do something that will feed your soul, pet a furry animal, hug a loved one consensually, because the energy coming through is without a doubt going to move things in you. And so the invitation is to please find ways to care for yourself and to metabolize and digest some of what you received and what may have come up for you in this process. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to all of you and all of your wise and well ancestors. And thank you to you, Foluke, and all of your wise and well ancestors and holy helpers. Thank you for being here. From Root to Bone is a podcast from Decolonizing Therapy. It is hosted by me, Dr. Jenn Mullen. Our producer is Tribble at Ash Tribble Incorporated. Original music by Laura Burke and cover art by Madre Shell. Don't forget to find us on Instagram at Decolonizing Therapy and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Decolonizing Therapy, for the full video version of each episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your people and leave us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps people find us. For more info about Decolonizing Therapy, visit our website, www.decolonizingtherapy.com. Be well.